Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am Anderson9132. Thank you very much for joining me today, and we have a very special interview with a very special person. Today's guest has been in the teams on the classic Robot Wars and in the reboot Robot Wars as well. He's been a big part of the robot combat community for well over a decade, and he's really just a stand-up bloke. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Stuart Barnwell. Stuart, thank you very much for joining me today.
Hi there, nice to meet you. How you doing?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. How are you doing with everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, now we're starting going back to work. We're keeping us busy, but yeah, all good.
Oh well, at least it's back to work. That's the main thing. And keeping you busy means you don't get stuck bored at home all day.
Yeah, definitely.
Right.
Not as much time to play with robots now, though.
Oh well, the sacrifice for a. I don't know really what you're sacrificing it for. Go back to the robots. Right, well, we may as well jump straight into it. So, I guess the first question is the obvious one. Where did it all start for you? How did you become a fan, and how did you transition from a fan into a roboteer?
Wow. Yeah. So I obviously, like most people, saw it on TV. I started watching it from series one. Loved it. Not just because I loved robots, technology, and just roboty stuff, but I like the special effects as well. The fire, the fireworks, the bangs, etc. So I got into it and was hooked into it, and then I've forgotten the year or when it started, but it was actually Rex's Robot Challenge when they did that magazine, Real Robots, I think it was called. So yeah, it was a great opportunity to follow something step by step to build a creation basically, and get involved. And so me and my dad started doing that on a monthly basis. I think the magazine was out. Um, so at least we wasn't wasting money on something that didn't work at the end. We actually had something to follow. So we started building a Featherweight together with Rex's Robot Challenge, and then grew up and got to robot working and managed to meet other roboteers and start getting involved basically. But there along the way, um, made friends with, like everybody else, was starting emailing their favourite teams and when it was on TV, and sort of like asking them questions and being little fanboys, etc. And but actually became good friends with Alan Gribble. Actually, started emailing back a little bit more, and actually, my first featherweight design was to have crushing claws at the front, catnip, I think it was called. Obviously, wood wasn't going to cut it, trying to be a crusher. So we did make one using a windscreen wiper motor and a few wooden gears or something like that. And then Alan obviously took pity on us and was like, "I'll do the metal part of the claws for you to sort of bolt onto the rest of your robot." And that's how we got started basically. So started off watching the TV, Real Robots with me and my dad. Made friends with a few teams, mainly Alan Gribble from the Pussycat team at the time, and then actually helped out. And then and as our friendship carried on, and Ian, at a later date, he just turned the whole. He said, "Let's do this properly and turn the whole thing into metal." And that's how he started, basically.
Oh, that's typical. That sounds like typical Alan from what I've heard, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah,
So, before we move on to the actual show, just quickly, because Simon Harrison actually mentioned this to me and he asked me to ask you about it. I think he wants to reminisce, bless him. There were these things called, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Is it the Ouville or Owlville robot meets? They sort of happened in the early 2000s. Do you want to explain what those were and how they worked?
yeah. I only went to one, but it only took one to kick things off.
We all
Uh,
remember that one, don't we?
that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah. So when I sort of, yeah, and again on the internet, because that's where everybody obviously, you had I think it's the Robot Wars forum. I think it's before the FI forum actually, but I made friends with another roboteer local to me. He was in Houso in Birmingham. Paul, PK was his nickname, and he had a robot called Lazarus. Yes, yeah, Lazarus that he was working on, and he was local, and he obviously knew me. I started having catnip and was involved with Pussycat a little bit. But that was before I actually saw Pussycat, the heavyweights basically. I was just in my featherweight regime. Um, but we met up a few times, and because he was building a featherweight at the time, I believe. But he was going to that event, or it was in a car park, probably like the early version of a Robonerd event, basically. And before heavyweights were too powerful, that railway sleepers was enough to contain them, basically, in a car park. Um, So he said, "Oh yeah, I'll pick you up on the way. Let's go," because it was his first time, my first time, and obviously, yeah, meeting some celebrities off the TV from Robo Wars, it was a little bit intimidating. So I went with him, and yes, that's the first time where I met like Andrew Marchant, Simon, John Reed from Terrorhertz. I believe Canopy was there. I'm trying to think actually. I think some of the lads from what were they called? Mortis were there, and it was the first time I saw heavyweight. Heavyweights, and it was obviously very part of the fanboy of me was jumping around like, oh my god, this is Tornado and Terahertz, etc. So it was good to actually see the heavyweights up front and in person. And again, they were obviously having practice and small fights in the car park. I believe David Gamble from the Tornado team brought his Tesla car that he'd been working on that year. So that was good to watch that at night time. Quite scary, actually. So that was actually my first robot event or meetup or social, and the first time I saw heavyweights, and first time I met most of the Roboteers. And actually, it's quite funny you mentioned it that I think it was last year. David uploaded a photo of his Tesla car on Facebook, and someone tagged somebody in it, and I spotted my head in the background. I said that was my first event, and then Simon was in the photo as well. So that's what brings the memories back. Was that was the first time I saw heavyweights, and it was, and that's where everyone got the bug, basically, to carry on.
Well, I definitely got the bug at Robonerd last year, and it was interesting you mentioned it was the Robonerd of its time, considering this is an interview for Robonerd.
Yeah.
Thanks, COVID, for making up the bit. We're doing what we can do. We're doing what we can do. So then, obviously, the TV show happened. We all know how Robot Wars happened, etc., etc. And as you mentioned earlier, you became friends with Alan Gribble, and of course, you went from having... Well, first of all, I want to discuss Extreme 2, because that was like your first sort of time on television. You had Catnip, and I believe it was Kitty, which was like a featherweight version of Pussycat.
That's right, yeah.
How was that? Because that was really your first time on the TV. How was that for you?
Obviously exciting, but then the other half was terribly intimidating and scary. One, not just because we were there with the featherweights, so a very quick story is obviously when I started getting close with Alan Gribble and that guy, and he helped out with our featherweight. And then sadly, when David passed away, they didn't enter the next series of Rebel Wars, so they skipped it out. But I continued with the featherweight and etc. And then he decided he wanted to build a featherweight version of Kitty, just so we could actually compete together, but also go to events together. And he had a mini Kitty. He just wanted to do it just for the engineering sake of it. The fact it was competitive, actually, and I believe, now I think about it, it was the first featherweight spinner as well in its time. So I do remember that now, even though nastier spinners came after it, but he didn't build it obviously just to be a featherweight spinner. He didn't even want it to be that competitive. He did it as a challenge to make a miniature version of Pussycat that anybody can just drive and have fun with, basically, but obviously make it as a featherweight. So the two featherweights came along, and then and that's when we both entered Extreme 2. So I believe, him and his wife Anne were driving Kitty, and I was driving Catnip with my parents as well. So it was intimidating to be standing on that podium at the top, and obviously walking past the house robots when you have to go to your control panel, and obviously they're bigger than you, let alone the heavyweights are obviously huge, and that was intimidating just to see everything else, and doing as you're told by the production crew. And then again, the house robots were obviously in the arena with the featherweights, so it was probably even more nerve-wracking knowing that, everything could cry out in a bin bag in a minute. So it was really good. At the same time, it's like your dream to go on the TV show, but it was really long days and intimidating at the same time, but great fun. Really, really good.
And then, of course, just a little bit further on down the line, you entered Series 7. Alan graced you with the captain and controls of the heavyweight Pussycat. How did that feel? Because obviously you've gone from, because my memory recollects really well. My memory's pretty good with this sort of stuff because I'm a nerd. Obviously the TV time for Extreme 2 was quite short for the featherweights because it was just sort of like a highlight reel for most part. This was your first time properly being interviewed. This was your first time entering with a heavyweight. This was your first time... And you were with a legendary robot, let's not forget, as well. So was there a lot of pressure, do you feel?
Well, there was that, isn't it? So I believe when they did Extreme 2, which was filmed off the back of Series 7. It was a case of bring the heavyweights back, we'll do some shows and some fights and battles and competitions. But if you have a featherweight, bring it along. We think we might find time to put them in a fight. So that's actually you featherweights were standby, basically. But obviously they took part, and it was great fights and great TV. But then when the Series 7 came, it was, that was, like you said, being to live up to, well, not even trying to live up to it, even trying to be half as good a driver as David was with the machine, because she is as you know, worked any way up, and you have to know which way up she is, and have very fast reactions, and you just need to be tuned in of exactly what the robot's doing. So I learned to drive with the featherweights, and then Kitty actually became a practice machine. So it was great to actually practice with the featherweight first, and then that's when Alan was like, "Yeah, I think it's time we go back to where it was," after obviously grieving, and then that's when Dwight, you need to start practicing with Pussycat. Actually, I remember the first time they brought Pussycat to my house. Actually, before all that happened, they got it out of the car. Didn't even tell me they're bringing Pussycat. And when I got it out of the car, it's like, wow. And then we had a quick drive up and down the road, and I think I hit a lamppost and knocked the light off. So I had to hide away. But yeah, so it was a good. That was because also Alan was on the tech crew of Series 7, sort of not last minute, but so it was going to be him, his wife, and me. But then he was invited to work on the tech crew to help other teams keep going. So their job, the tech crew, was not just to help the production crew to keep everything running smoothly and on time and etc. But the tech crew were there to help maintain or help the Roboteers fix their robots or get the help that they needed to keep the show running. So I believe it was like himself. Was it Carl? Who was the head of team captain of Panic Attack? Davis. Kim Davis. That was it. So it's him, Kim Davis, George Francis as well. That's it. There's the three of them, I believe. I'm sorry if I missed the other one out or the other few out, but I believe it was Kim Davis, George Francis from Chaos 2, and Alan were sort of like the tech crew that worked with Derek Foxall, the head of the team. So I met him for the first time when I was there with just the featherweight, and and seeing him run the show, and I sort of helped him just go and get cups of teas. But he said, "Oh, this is the person you want to be involved with if you want to go to special effects," which is what I wanted to do at the time. But then when you're there as a Roboteer and as a team, and then yes, it was very, very scary. Because like I said, featherweight, it was a quick pan with the camera to ask everybody, what's your team, what's your robot, what weapons it got. Whereas this was part of the show, so it was like proper full-on interviews. But it wasn't as bad as I think Jane Middlemiss. It was her first series, so we made a bit of a bond, or she did with my mum. The two ladies being like, "Yeah, it's our first time as well. We can we can be scared together." But no, she was great. So we actually, I watch back at the clips now, and you can see these little banters that we had when the camera wasn't rolling. We used to wind each other up, and then she brought it into the interview. So no, it was good fun. That's how that came along. Basically, it was like, Alan's like, "I've got to go on the tech crew, and you've got to run Pussycat. Off you go." It's like, oh.
Talk about chucking you in the deep end, then.
It was a bit, but thankfully she doesn't need that much maintenance. The only place that took all the damage was the blade at the front. So because even back in the day, she had really thick, like 2-inch thick aluminium bulkheads, which was well above ahead of everybody's era. And even then, it took the big hits, and the wheels, even though they're exposed, they were thick tired golf caddy wheels or something. So she never got really any damage, apart from when Razor put holding her. But the damage that she would get from fights would just be the shaft or the blade itself, which takes all the hits anyway. But obviously, just easily change and put another blade on. We won't go into the blades unless you want to.
No, that was before you were on the team. We won't go into that. Don't you worry. I'm sure.
No, we did put the blade on upside down in the tag team. Alan did. I think it was tag team Extreme.
I remember that. Yeah, the Extreme One tag team. Yes.
The blade was put on upside down, so when we hit Bulldog Breed head on, the inertia of our hit, and he flipped at the same time. We just flew out the arena, but we watched it back, and the blade was going the wrong way because he put it on upside down. Oh well.
Oh, Alan. Bless him. So, of course, being on the show, I'm sure there's many, many stories you can tell about what happened with you and fellow Roboteers. I don't want to go. We're pressured for time, so we can't go into too many. But is there a particular story that sticks out to you that you might want to share with everyone listening right now?
I think there's one that I've never shared before, but since we're on the topic and certain people in Robonerd, Simon, are involved,
Oh,
I've forgotten if it was, he's probably going to hit me next time he sees me. I don't know if it was Series 7 or the Extreme, but I know I was in a fight, or the All-Star, sorry. It was a melee, and we were backstage, and I was with Pussycat, and King B, Simon with King B was in the same fight, and some others. And I was sitting down on the box with my mum, and I saw Simon go over to Pussycat and started playing with her wheels and touching and feeling and just looking, having a good look around like he was trying to size her up. And it made me very nervous, thinking like, what are people doing? Are they like literally go over and touch your robot and have a look to see where to hurt you? And it really freaked me out, I must admit. And then, so in my head, I thought, activate, I'm going straight for you. So as soon as it's, I know I'm going to regret this. And as soon as the activate happened, I went straight for him. And in the first few seconds or 20 seconds or so of the fight, I kept on going after him, and I believe I chopped through the side of him and chopped his chain off his one side, so he lost drive on one side. So I feel bad for that, and I feel even more bad because after the fight, when we was taking the robots out of the arena on the trolleys, and I went over to have a look to see the damage that happened, I think he mentioned, I said, yeah, I saw you looking at Pussycat, and he goes, yeah, I was looking at the wheels because I think we use the same wheels, so I was only looking at your robot to see if we use the same wheels, but I thought he was trying to iron me up. So there's a lesson learned there. Don't touch other people's robots before a fight.
oh, bless him.
I feel really guilty for that. And then what happened on the reboot of Robot Wars? Obviously, it wasn't planned. Well, it was planned because it was a one-on-one. We felt really bad when Shane and us, the rest of the team, the Dantomkia, had to obviously fight one-on-one with King B. Again, we flipped him out the arena, but that's not the point. But actually, in the first melee, there was a bit of you go after him, we'll go after them. So we're best friends eventually, so it's fine. But yeah, even to this day, I feel a bit guilty. Go straight to him.
Oh dear. Well, there's a Robonerd exclusive for everyone listening. Now, whilst you were at Series 7, there was also a second team that you were a part of. I'm right thinking you were also on the Tomahawk team for the, I want to say this as nice as I possibly can, the brief time it was on screen. Bless him. I feel quite bad, actually, because it didn't last very long. But do you want to quickly just explain how that all worked out and how that happened?
Yeah, it's actually, so as I mentioned before, we went to that pre-Robonerd event, and PK, he had his robot. His first one was called Lazarus, and then he converted it and upgraded it to Tomahawk. So we were friends. He was in Birmingham, and I was sort of part of his team. And we went around the live event. So before I had a heavyweight, before I was trusted to take Pussycat, I stuck with the Featherweights. But then he attended these live show events with his heavyweight. So I was sort of on his team for the heavyweight, and then I looked after the two Featherweights, basically. So I was on his team then. So then actually, as he entered Robot Wars and got through for the pre-heats or the eliminators before you get onto the live show. And I was, as I said, but that was before, because Alan wasn't going to go on that Series 7 of Robot Wars. So I was signed up with him. Well, he signed me up without telling me. It was sort of last minute. They said, actually, Alan, do you want to come on the tech crew, and do you want to bring Pussycat? And because we need to, not just to fill the numbers up, but I think it's time for you to come back. And then that's when Alan was like, "Yeah, I think he can drive it properly now." he's been practicing with the Featherweight version. So yes, I ended up being on two teams. So I was on PK's team with Tomahawk, which sadly it didn't last that long because of I forgot what happened. I think he said a battery wire came off or something. But annoyingly, the axe on it was very powerful. If anything, I think he worked it out. It was actually more powerful than terahertz, but as we know, a robot is not all about just its weapon, it's how reliable the motors, the speaking charge, and the chassis is. So the axe might have been more powerful if it hit you and caught you, but sadly the rest of the robot didn't live up as much as Terahertz, obviously. So, but no, it was good fun.
That is a shame we didn't get to see it in action then, although it is a spiritual successor to the Tomahawk that exists today, so that's interesting. You were on a robot that was also... That's two robots that were in both classic and original series you were on the team of. If you want to look at it, kind of. That's impressive.
That's existed by the Dutch ladies, I think, wasn't it? Tomahawk, on the last reboot TV show. Yeah, but they're good laugh as well.
Yeah, good laugh. Lovely team, bless them. So... I now have a personal question from me, because the reason why I got asked to do this interview is because Pussycat is one of my favourite classic series robots of all time. I absolutely adore it.
Nice, so good know that. You got the time.
There you go. Learn something new every day. Of all the battles that you drove Pussycat in, which would you say was your favourite and why?
My favourite and why? It would... for two different reasons, actually. It would have to be the All Stars final, not just because I won it. That's not the reason why it's favourite. Actually, it was quite a little bit lucky I won it. Some would say it was because when I was doing going around the live scenes, I became very close to Mike Lambert from the Dantomkia team in the days. I've quite a few teams. Because I'm travelling around these live events on my own, or being dropped off by my parents, or when I actually could drive myself, when I learned to drive, I was on my own. So a few people wanted to be like my Robot Wars parents. I think I had quite a few actually. I had Jackie Lale from the Tilly team, and Mike from the Dantomkia team, Ian Lockhart from the Lamsey team. Quite a few people adopted me at these live events. And yeah, so we became really good friends, and I learned so much from him. And I think I even travelled to some live events with him abroad, actually, with his team, because they owned Robodome events in Brighton, etc., in their arena. So we were good friends and banter anyway. And I believe, because he told me this after, we were in the backstage waiting for the fight to happen. We were just waiting for the previous fight to happen. I believe this was one of the last 2 or 3 fights of the day of the filming. So it was a case of like, this is it now. I believe actually it was 2 fights after the Razor and Tornado fight that happened with the controversial cage thing, and apparently I was standing there with my mum with Pussycat, just looking around, and he came past and he said, he told me after, he says, I was standing there and I looked really pale. And just looked like a ghost. And I didn't think about it at the time, but I was really nervous. I felt a bit sick and all that. And he came over and started winding me up like he does, a bit of banter, like, oh, you're going to lose, you're crap at this, and blah, 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 excuse me. And doing things annoying me to wind me up, to get my adrenaline going. And then when the fight happened, it was full on, because I was nervous. I didn't want to fight against a friend. Obviously, we all have these fun fights when you're at live events, and it's fine. You sort of, if you back off a little bit. But when you're at Robot Wars and the house robots are there, it's like, what happens if there's 2 of them there, or what happens if you stop and then the house robot comes and gets you? And anyway, so I didn't really want to fight him. I didn't want to compete against a friend. So, but the battle went on quite a long time. It was really good, and it's a really strong machine with all its thick hard ox arm at the front. He was taken out of more powerful spinners, but as we all know, the way Pussycat's built, it runs every way up, but it's not a case of if you flip it, it needs to self right, it will just keep going wherever it is. You can't predict which way it's going to bounce. And I managed to get round to the back where he didn't have any hard ox, and I sliced through his battery cable, or hit the link as well. So he died, and that's how. But then so not only was I chuffed because I won that against him, but against a good friend, and it was a really good scrap. But then, because it was the end of the day, I thought, sod it, and I started attacking the house robots. And then that was even more scary. So I believe, actually, I look back at it now, it was Cassius Chrome grabbed us and rammed us into the side of the wall because Mr. Psycho couldn't stop us. And they hit the wall so hard, the whole stage which we were standing on locked over as well. I mean, I was quite scared. I believe you could see Mike's expression, but that was a really good scrap, actually, just for many reasons, just to annoy the house robots as well.
That's awesome, and it's another interesting fact about that. I don't know if you knew this, but because you winning that fight, Pussycat is the only robot in Robot Wars history to win the big three side events: the All Stars, the Tag Team Terror, and the Annihilator.
I did not know that. Yeah, that's true,
Well,
actually.
there you go. I'm throwing all the facts today. So, as we all know, not long after that battle was filmed, the hiatus happened. Sad time for all. But obviously, a lot of live event stuff happened around that time. Were you involved in many live event things between the original and reboot series?
Was probably all of them, or at least 90% of them. So I think I went to that's it. So I think one of my first events I went to, a proper competitive fight event, was Newark. I think Roaming Robots started up with their travel arena, so I went to some of their events around the UK. That did. I think I went to 2 or 3 at the start, and then I got a little bit older that I could drive myself, so I wasn't always being dropped off or dragging my mum along around the country, up and down the country to these events with the Featherweights. So I pretty much went to most of those ones, and then a few other companies started up, like Robots Live and Extreme Fighting Machines, and then Robodome and a few others. So I was at pretty much all of them, even if it was just with the Featherweights. But then when Alan sort of handed Pussycat over for training and to trust me instead of just sitting there gathering dust, that was it. There was no stopping me. I was going all over the place with the live events. So that kept me busy with the live event scene. I think I went to one event in Aberystwyth actually with Roaming Robots, and that's when they started saying, we said, well, maybe you need the pit that moves, maybe you need a sound effect, maybe you want some smoke machine there, maybe you want some lights over there, or a flipper. You need someone to control put some music on during the fights, a bit like TV. And they're like, oh yeah, that's really good. Well, you come and do it with us. So I started working for Roaming Robots for quite a few years then as the special effects person, and that's how we grew and started having more arena effects such as the pyrotechnics, the angle grinders, the CO2 jets, the pit, the flipper, and it just grew. And then I started helping out at Extreme Fighting Machines when they did big featherweight events as well. So I was pretty involved in all of most of the live events. Actually took over my life. Yeah, I think there's sometimes it was literally every other. It got so bad one year. I say bad. I don't mean it bad. It got so busy that one year, I think the event organisers were sort of struggling to fit their events in because they were clashing with each other. So I don't know. So it was it kept us busy.
Yeah, definite proof that the sport was never going to die that easy.
No, that's right.
And it didn't, because obviously the reboot happened, and somewhat ironically, you entered with Dantomkia, the robot that you just beat last time on the show. So how did that happen? Because obviously Shane Swan purchased the new, because this was a brand new Dantomkia built by Mike Lambert a couple of years earlier, am I right in thinking?
Right, yeah.
And then Shane Swan purchased it off of him. How did you go from not being on the team to being on the team and eventually being on the show?
Yeah, it's again, everyone being working at the live events and taking part. Obviously, got to know great guy Shane and everybody else. Even if I was just Mr. Pit person that controlled the arena flip or the pit at the live shows and annoyed everybody, but so we all became good friends. That was it. So myself, my partner Kevin, and Amy, we set up kinematic events to do beta weights around some of the pubs. We talk about that later. So we set it up that little company to take it around, and Shane was our guest judge as well as Andrew Marchant at some of the events, and was quite involved because Shane used to be involved in the beta weight weight class as well. I believe he sort of inherited an arena from Tom, and then he modified it and then used it and then sold it on or something. But so he was involved in beta weights. He then came to our beta weight events that we did with kinematics, and then when the reboot happened and there was a few rumours that it was going to happen and a few people got wind, or I think they'll probably test the water if there's actually enough robots that are still working to put on another show. And as you said, Mike just finished, well, not just, but had a brand new Dantomkia, not really doing anything. And Shane, being everybody's best friend, well, no, close with Mike as well, he obviously brought it off mic, and then he needed a team. He was like, Stu, Kev, Amy, let's take Dantomkia to the next of the reboot, basically, because he obviously he was the driver, great driver. I was the weapons person, and then actually Kev and Amy learned what needs to be done when maintaining, looking after robots from the shows that we did. So it was a good team, actually. It was a good laugh.
Oh, good to hear. That's a really nice story. So you were on the classic series and you're on the rebooted series. What was there any major difference with how everything was done, and like behind the scenes, etc., etc.?
Yeah. How do we say it without being controversial? So back in the day, when you had the original, the first series of Robot Wars that was obviously done by Mentor on BBC and then a bit of Channel 5, it was a case of this is the TV show, it's you have to be where you need to be on time, and obviously the house robots were there. Obviously they were at the other one as well, but if the fight was boring or something like that, or if you stopped working, as you know, the house robots would just go nuts on you. And yes, obviously, not everybody wanted their robots trashed, just for TV's sake. Obviously, we understand you've got to put on a TV show, you've got to keep the viewers, you've got to keep it entertaining. But obviously, if you've got this, I know people built robots for combat. They accept that when they put it in the arena, it can come out in a bin bag. But I think there's a little bit of a few people were like, well, yeah, we're fighting the opponent and it stops working. Is it right that the house robots should come and trash you for TV? But it just seems a little bit more strict. And we're here, we're doing this TV show, and you're being invited to. If you're selected to come and take part, and it was just all strict, and they separated the pits from the crowd as well with a big black curtain. So it was I don't think intimidating is the right word, but it was a bit more. I wanted to say professional, but that's the wrong word. It was just a bit more serious, maybe. Whereas the reboot, there was a lot of calibration and a better relationship between the production crew and the Roboteers, mainly because some of the production crew were ex-Roboteers anyway. So there was that good communication, that good relationship. Obviously, you had a time limit. You needed to have your robot ready for your set fight, or you got disqualified. That's fair. That's fine. Everyone understood that. But the pits were sort of half integrated with the arena and the seating anyway. I believe in one of the series they started bringing the crowd or parts of the crowd around the pits anyway, to do a bit like what they did on Top Gear when they come round in the audience, etc. So it felt a bit more connected. And to be fair, the production crew, if they had any sort of issues or questions, or they didn't understand how we can do something better, they would come and have a meeting with the Roboteers as a big gang and sort it out, or let you know what's going to happen. And the house robots, to be fair, they didn't come and trash you if you stopped working for the sake of it. Granted, some of the fights did look a bit boring. If a robot stopped working or one of its wheels was damaged, it was just going around in circles. The house robots mainly stayed back because there was that little bit of more of a gentleman's agreement that we're not going to trash the robots. But actually, that was probably more down to the fact that they had this round robin system. So you had to take part in at least 3 fights to get points. So there's no point you stop working in the first fight and then the house robots trash you, because you need to be working in an hour's time for your next fight. Don't get me wrong, some of the Roboteers just said, yeah, if I stop working, go and trash me for good TV, off you go. Do your worst, which is probably why the house robots took a little bit more punishment than normal, because Roboteers were obviously after them as well. So they were both good in their own different rights. They had two different sort of feelings, as it were, but no, they're both great, actually. So it was good to see the comparisons, but I'd say the later ones were a little bit more relaxed, maybe, just because we felt more closer to the arena and the production crew, maybe.
There you go. See, I mean, nobody really understands. It's nice to hear that, because a lot of people don't realise that this is a TV show and things go into it a lot more. It's not more than just turning up, smashing a robot and going home. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff you've got to get past as well. So it's good to hear it from someone who's been on not one but both of the shows. So that's really nice. And so you had quite a bit of a extensive stay on the live circuit. And I also, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I heard that you also created like your own live event, and it was where Beatles sort of started cutting into robot combat a bit more. Maybe you could further evaluate on that.
Yeah, it worked out quite well because so when Robot was obviously off air for quite a few years, and the live shows were going, but then the spinners were too powerful really for obviously heavyweights, and even featherweights were getting to the point they're getting quite vicious, so they were banned unless you had like a class 1 or class 2 arena they call it, which there's very few of them, or just 1 or 2. So people started going down to the beetleweight class because they're about a kilo or 1.2 kilos in weight, and obviously the arenas are smaller, but you can make the plastic thicker, or polycarb. So everyone was going towards beetleweights, and I think Shane was involved in one of the arenas, and Tom built one, and then it got passed on to David Weston, and they were they were like in the sideshow, but then they started to they were there. People knew the beetleweights were there, but they weren't fully because they're hard for the crowd to see them, because like a big live show with a big arena, obviously it's hard for hundreds of people to go up to a small arena. That's why the outweights probably don't get the attention they deserve at the bigger events, because it's hard to get people around it. And then at the time, a few years later, partner works for a large chain pub and restaurant company, and they have obviously entertainment budgets where they can hire DJs, bouncy castles, etc., just to keep customers and kids happy. And it was just at the time I thought we could do something different here. We could get small beta weights and have what they do at some of the big shows, the pay to drive, so you can pay a couple of quid and have little battles with your friends and family. So I thought we could do this with the beetle weights, and we could actually add spinners and actually add effects and make them really interesting and quite theatrical and quite cool, because they're small, and we do it that way. We thought, well, if we could take it on a bit of a tour around this pub and chain restaurant, Green King or Hungry Horse, if people know them. So myself, Kev and Amy actually formed Kinematic Events. We designed the arena, the Beetleweight arena, the Kinematic arena, so it could fit in 2 Ford Focuses boots, because that's the 2 cars we had. We both had a Ford Focus, so I know to this day, anything couldn't be bigger than 1 meter and 1.4 meters to fit in 2 cars. And yeah, we had 3 months or 2.5 months, including over Christmas, to get everything built when we pushed the go button, when we got given the contract, etc. So we spoke with and got Ellis where with Pulsar. He designed and built the amazing Beetleweight page drive robots we had, with the spinner, pusher, and the lifter or flipper, Firestorm type flipper. And then David Weston built 2 great house robots, Crank and Scorpio, we called it, with the axe. And then actually, do you remember Chompalot team, Deb and Simon? They helped with the welding of the arena, so we chopped it all up and ordered everything, and then he would come over and help us weld it together, because he obviously had a welder. I can't weld, or if I could, it would fall apart straight away. I just do nuts and bolts in CAD, not as good as Ellis and whatever or other people at CAD, but I can't weld, and I thought I'll leave it to the professionals. So yeah, we built the arena, made it very easy to construct and put away in 2 cars, and yeah, we toured the UK, including Scotland, with this Kinematic arena. It was about 3 meters by 3 meters, and it had like 10 mil polycarb around it when we doubled it up. And obviously we were getting paid to go around and take this page drive arena around pubs and restaurants, but at the same time we were ploughing that money back into the community by hosting the Beetleweight Championships. I think we did the European Championships twice. We also got the chance to travel abroad with the arena, with RS Electronics in Germany, in Munich, because they had big events over there. And so we took the arena over there for their clients to play with. But mainly it was to go around the UK and and that's when Beetleways just went boom. Everyone could see how, at the time, cheap to make and have, and they are cheap to make, but obviously some people can really take it to the next level with the motors and the titanium armor, etc. But they're great class, because anybody could get involved, and all the way around schools as well. With Team Storm, that they set up school projects, so kids as young as 12 and 13 were building robots, Beetleweights from scratch, and they took part in the European Championships as well. So it was great. We had great fun with that. But then at the time, we both changed our cars, so we couldn't fit to the arena in a Jaguar and a Mercedes. So then we had to hire a van every single time, which was fine. We still did the events, but then it got to the point that our careers and our jobs were taking too much time, and we didn't have enough time to dedicate to the Beetleweight live events, because they were booming. They were practically quite often, especially with the Bristol Bot boys as well. We had a great relationship with them, and we took the arena for their events as well. And they came along, and that was great. But yeah, we couldn't keep it up anymore, so so the arena got passed over to Shane Tilley, who's with techno events. So then they carried on the arena, and obviously there's another arena. Dave Weston's got his arena as well. So at least the Beetleweights are really booming. I think the Bristol Bots people are doing really well, and Bugglebots as well that came into play. So it's great to see the Beetleweights still thriving, as it were. We do keep getting asked, and we keep saying yes, and we will enter a team, a robot, and we will come back. But we keep saying yes, and we haven't done it yet. But we will be coming back as a roboteer, an event. We get asked to be guest judges at the moment. So I think Amy was asked to be a guest judge a few months ago, and that was quite intimidating for her, because she's never been on that side of the fence, as it were. She's already got a robot, actually, because so she's been playing with that. But yeah, we will be back. But it was good fun. So we actually turned into an event organizer ourselves. But it's great to see what everyone's doing with the Beetleweights, because it's a great opportunity to get into roboteering. I think better than the Featherweights, but then you move up, obviously, as you know. But, no, it was good fun.
Awesome. That is really, really awesome, because, like you said, not only did you manage to start a new revolution, I guess, but you managed to get younger people into it, people who might not have the money to get involved again, and you got to travel. So, I mean, that's a big 3 wins for me straight off the bat.
Well, yeah, it's good travel, especially, well, again, I'm going to get shot by a few people. Alistair, I love Scotland, but it's too cold and windy, and all I could say is we were at this one restaurant, I don't know, I've forgotten the name of it. It was a Hungry Horse restaurant, and it was literally on the coast, and we were outside in the garden. We set up the arena under a gazebo and waiting for people to come, and it was great. It went really well and successful and got a good turnout. But then at about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's like the heavens just opened. Okay, we can deal with rain, that's fine, we've got a gazebo. But the wind, because it was on the coast, was blowing this gazebo all over the place. The arena was actually lifting off the floor a little bit. So it was like, yeah, we're bloody Scottish weather. But it was good fun.
Brilliant. Now, just before we wrap things up, this is for Robonerd, so I'm going to have to ask you a few quick-fire questions. We've got to test your nerd cred. It's as simple as that. 5 very simple, very easy questions. Hopefully. Question number 1. Aside from any of your own robots, what is your favourite robot of all time? It can be from anything as well. It can be from Battlebots, Robot Wars, any weight class. What would you say is your favourite robot?
I'd say Terahertz, really, because of I think it still looks amazing. I used to love the see-through and the polycarb chassis, and then obviously upgraded it. But it had a deadly weapon, and it was just so nimble. John Reed, a great driver, but I liked it just because it just looked so futuristic and menacing, basically. So I would say that I really enjoyed that one, basically.
Fair shout. A lot of people like Terahertz to this day. I've got a friend who'll be happy to hear you say that, actually. Much the same question, but with battles. Which was your favourite battle that you didn't compete in?
Probably the Razor v Tornado fight. Actually, I know there's a few of them. There's 2 of them or 3 of them. I've forgotten now.
Oh, the Series 6 Grand Final, the controversial one, as everyone calls it.
Yes, yeah. I was actually in the House Roboteers control pod when they took part in that one, because that was when I went as just someone in the background, just to see with the pits and what went with some of the teams, and we took off Featherweights, and actually I shouldn't say, but Julie from the Cat Free team was. She was with me as well, and we managed to sneak in with one of the House Roboteers pods during that fight, so we saw it up face, and it was a very, very good fight. So, but that's probably special to me because I was there and actually saw it from a different view. But it looked even amazing on TV as well. But like you said, very controversial. Team Tornado. But anyway,
I can edit that bit out of an EB. Of course, the age-old question: Battlebots or Robot Wars?
Yeah, I'm going to say Robot Wars, just because I'm probably more of a Robot Wars person in terms of grew up with it. That's what got me into the sport. And a few people will probably slate me for this. I haven't watched that many BattleBot shows. Or series. I think I watched a few many years ago, and it didn't interest me. I didn't like it. I didn't like the format. I didn't like the just how it was. But don't get me wrong. I've seen clips of some of the latest ones because obviously some of our British teams have been flying over there with some amazing machines. So I've seen some clips like Carbide and a few. I've forgotten the other one now, and they all look amazing. So yeah, I can't. So to be unbiased, probably Robot Wars, just because I've not seen that many BattleBots. But the new series does look a lot better from when I watched it about 10 years ago. So yeah.
Fair enough. I'm glad you said Robot Wars. I too am on Team Robot Wars. Did you play any of the Robot Wars games? Because there were a few released back in the day.
Yeah, I played the actual Robot Wars one on the console, and then got it on PC, and then I started playing that Robot Arenas as well. Actually, that probably lived on that for quite a few months. I haven't played the latest ones though, because apparently people are customizing the arena robots and all sorts now. But no, I was quite addicted to the Robot Wars game as well at the time. That took up a lot of my time.
And the final question: if you could fight any robot at all, not you personally, obviously you're with a robot instead, which robot would it be and why?
Yeah, part of me would say, part of me at the back would say, could I have a go at Razor? Because I know that Pussycat was renowned for beating Razor. Some people say it was lucky, some people say it was skill. But obviously, me not being anywhere near as good as David was at driving, but I would have liked to have a pop at Razor. Or the other one would be, again, as I mentioned before, Terahertz, just because it's just so menacing, basically.
That's fair. Well, that wraps things up very nicely. Stuart, thank you very much for joining us today for this interview. It's been a pleasure talking to you today. It really has.
And you, take care.
Thank you very much. Take good care of yourself. Thank you very much for watching this interview. I've been Anderson9132. You can see me on the YouTube channel, Anderson9132, obviously. Another big thank you once again to Stuart Barnwell for joining us. And enjoy the rest of Robonerd.